it is up to us to go in there and understand what's adding support to our foundation and what's taking away or adding pressure to our foundation. And just like we would look at that for any structure, we have to look at it for our own structure and begin to remove the things, clear the things, to heal the things that are placing undue pressure and stress on our foundation, so that over time we don't crumble. And that's on every level of ourself, not just on the physical, not just on the mental, emotional, on all aspects of who we are. And that's where this mirror technique gets us in there and truly looking at ourselves. Hi, and welcome to the Heart Leader Podcast, where our heart and our mind align. I'm your host, Amber, and I'm joined by Austin as we continue our journey through the book that we are writing called Silence Your Inner Critic. We've spent several weeks now on our podcast really traversing the origin story of what we refer to as this supervillain that lives within inside pretty much every one of us, that likes to tell us what we can or can't do and really keep us kind of trapped inside our own inner sanctum. And then we've talked about what impact that has on our relationships, especially with our self-relationship. Now, what we would like to do is empower you to become your superhero. We've heard about the hero's journey, but this is a superhero's journey. This is about empowering that inner champion inside of you to stare down that inner critic and silence it. Now, we know we may never be able to destroy that villain, but we can certainly put it into its own little separate compartment and silence it each time it decides it's going to rise up and think that it can take over our inner sanctum. If you have not had a chance to go back and learn about the origin story of this super villain, it is available in our previous podcasts. Or if you wonder, so what? What impact does this inner critic have on my life? Also, a great opportunity to go back and look at some of the previous episodes. And if you would like all of these tools that we're going to be talking about to become your own inner champion, to be that superhero that you are, take a moment now and hit subscribe, because that way you will never miss an episode to become the superhero on your own hero's journey. This time, what we're going to focus on as we transition in is a starter kit. You know, we all have starter kits for things that we do in our life, whether we're video editing and we need that basic toolkit, or we are working on a project in our home, repairing something, and we need that starter kit that has the hammer and the wrench and the screwdriver, or you enjoy makeup and you're looking for that basic set of brushes. There's always this little starter kit that gets you moving so you become familiar with it. Well, the same is true when we're going within and we're building out our own superhero skills. And we're going to, over these next few episodes, gift you some of these starter kit items, the foundational ones that can really fit into your everyday, that can help you start to rewire the way you see yourself and the way that you feel about yourself. So when that inner critic kind of steps in and lassos you with those negative thoughts, those crippling thoughts, you can break free and say, not this time. You don't get to determine. I have my starter kit. So, Austin, we did this when we were first starting on your hero's journey and laying the foundation for a path forward. And I know part of your personality profile is you're like, give me everything right now. Just tell me everything. And then I'll sort it out. And it's a normal thing. Like, as people, we just give it to me all right now. And it took a little while. I know one of the things you had mentioned in a previous podcast was, gosh darn it, she made me work on breathing for 2 weeks. And I'm like, are we ever going to get past this? So I think you're an amazing person to talk about the benefits of having a starter kit and some base tools contained within that starter kit to go back to. And the actual frustration that can come from, why can't you just tell me everything right now? So let's start with that question. Why not just load me up right now with every tool there is so that I can figure it out for myself?
It's a great, yeah, it's so important because it's especially when it comes to yourself and these things. A lot of these tools aren't necessarily physical things, right? And so when they aren't physical, we want to just receive them all right away. But we have to apply it just like we would be building a house, right? Just because you want to build a house, for example, it doesn't mean you can just like, here's some wood and let's go. It's like, no, you have to have a foundation. You have to have plans and a strategy and just the whole, well, I don't really know what it takes to build a home, but all the things that architect and all the there's a lot of details. Is let's just go with that.
Yeah.
For my lack of architectural experience,
Which is why you need an architect
exactly.
to do it, right?
Yeah, you need someone to help you to plan it all out, to help you understand. Like, you may think you want one thing, but it may not fit in the way that you think. And so that's where an architect can help you strategize and understand, okay, if this is what you desire, then here's how it can fit in the bigger picture. And so we can't just say, okay, well, I want a house, so go build it. It's like, no, it doesn't quite work like that. You can't just all of a sudden have a house. There's a lot of planning involved, a lot of foundation building to create. And so that's exactly how it works with all the personal growth tools. And that's what a starter kit is all about, is to help you understand and build that solid foundation so that when you do have a home and years later, when you're living in that home, for example, it still is working really, really well for you.
Exactly. Because can you just go and build a house? Yeah.
Well, I can't.
Well, you could. It would probably end up looking like a shack.
Yeah.
Yeah. So your capability is there.
Yeah.
But the next thing you know, you have like rooms situated by other rooms which are not functional, and over time either your foundation wears away and the house starts to fall in, or functionally living with the bathroom sitting in the middle of the kitchen, which made sense because the plumbing was there, so why wouldn't you do that? And then you're like, oh, maybe this was not the best move I ever made. That starts to occur. And so there's a reason that you take steps and you use foundational tools at the beginning to build, as you said, that awareness to know, what is it that I even need? Because right now, if you don't know yourself well enough to know what it is that you need, because you're so connected to the inner critic that the inner critic is constantly telling you, then you need to create enough separation between you and your inner critic to know what you actually desire.
It's a great point. Knowledge is limited by awareness. And so we need someone or something to help us expand our awareness so we can grow our knowledge. Once we have that knowledge, then we can start to apply it to really make an impact and make the changes that we want to in our life.
Exactly. So why did I have you start with breathing for 2 weeks?
Yes. I was like, I've been breathing literally my whole life. Why am I focusing on this? And yeah, it was to build a foundation. Breath is our life. I mean, without breath, we're done, right? So it's no wonder that the very thing that is the very fuel for the essence of our souls, our body, our physical manifestations is far more important than we give it credit. And so when we bring that awareness to our breath, the first and foremost, it just made everything stop, because we're so busy doing all these other things, and we're really fortunate that breath is automatic. Because man, if we had to manually think about breathing in and then, oh God, we breathe out, and then it's how would we do life? I mean, it would be really, really difficult.
Right.
But if we flip that a little bit and recognize, okay, well, here's a tool that I can use intentionally, right? So if breath causes me to slow down, and being aware of my breath causes me to slow down, and it really pulls me into the moment, then I'm not so busy thinking about the future or worrying about the past. I'm in the present moment. I'm here. I'm breathing in and I'm breathing out. And it's like everything else starts to fade away. And when you have that awareness, that simple tool can change a whole decision. Where if you're so focused in the future and the past, you're probably going to make a decision that isn't the best for you. Now, hey, statistically, it could happen that you make a good decision, and that's fine. There are times where split decisions, and we have to do that. I get it. That's out there. But when you're making simple choices kind of throughout the day, and you can be more intentional and purposeful behind them, just taking a quick breath in to pause, maybe it might be another 3 or 4 seconds until you answer, but that could really dictate the trajectory of the rest of your day, for example. So it's a great foundational tool, and why you helped me realize that this is where we need to start. Focus on your breath, because it's a free tool that you can use anytime, and it can completely change your life by just taking 2 to 3 or even 4 extra seconds of your life uh, to gain clarity, to promote awareness, and apply knowledge at another level.
Yes. Not to mention the physical
Yeah.
impacts
Right.
that it makes, right? Oxygenating the body causes the muscles to just by default relax a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when we're anxious, everything tightens up. We're like, so when you oxygenate the body, the muscles relax, and it triggers us to know things are okay. If there was really something to be anxious about, then I wouldn't be relaxing. I would be getting ready to run
Yes.
or freeze or fight. So now my nervous system is saying, oh, okay, then I can relax a little bit. Things must be okay. And mentally, we've created a physical response of, okay, I can navigate this now.
Yeah.
But you had to cognitively create that space so that your body could relax. And so often we forget to do that because the inner critic is ready for a fight.
Yeah.
Right?
That's true.
The villain in us is like, everything's a fight. Everything's a battle. Let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go.
Yeah. Yeah. There's not really, when you say that, yeah, I'm just envisioning like a Zen relaxed negative statement. You know, it's like that's like even funny just to think about. It's like, yeah, no, it's like it just gets you all tensed up, and you're like, nah, no, I don't want. You know, it's not like like, you know, life is terrible. It's not like, you know, it's not like, or oh, you know, you're the worst at this. It's like, no, it's those thoughts get really, really intense. And it's like, man, you know, how could you do that? You know, why? You're so stupid. Like I've gone through my whole life thinking like that. And so until I really took that time to take that breath and reset and get centered and balanced, and it's like those thoughts just kind of, as the whole world starts to fall away with that breath, those thoughts start to fall away. And it's like I get the clarity and the realization and the authenticity of myself through the process as well. And it's like, no, that's not real. I know I'm not stupid. I know that I'm not the worst. Like, hey, I'm doing my best, and I'm learning.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Everything's okay.
Exactly. So, a big target area for that inner critic to latch onto.
Mm-hmm.
And I can say, by just sheer numbers of average, this is one that the average individual really has an inner struggle with. and that's appearance.
Mhm.
There's generally something, regardless of whom I find coming to me for support, it is when they discuss their satisfaction with the way they appear, there's a struggle somewhere, somehow, whether it is their body type, whether it is a physical feature, there is something that they feel self-conscious about and would love to hide away.
Mhm.
And the inner critic is like, ha, ha, I've got you there. I know what button to push. When all else, if you have all the confidence somewhere else, I know. It's like that person who knows the exact right button to push, except that person is inside of you.
Mhm.
And it's like the moment you start to feel confident, it comes around and it's like, but you still have that.
Mm.
Yes, you look gorgeous tonight, but you still have that.
Yeah.
And so in this starter kit, there is a tool, and it's one that we continue to offer for free because it's so invaluable. There's a tool that we leverage to begin to counteract that.
Mhm.
We call this your superpowers, right? These are your superpowers that you're learning to empower your superhero inner champion to get in there and really start to shackle that inner critic.
Mhm.
It's like the kryptonite for that inner critic to just shut it down. And it's called the mirror technique. And this is another one that you navigated
Mhm.
firsthand, and I did too. Like when I began to build this up, and I had used similar mirror techniques, but there were very subtle but large differences in the ones that I used. And so we honed it and created something a little new over time. But as we refined it, it was something that really started to speak to the soul,
Yeah.
not just the body, but the soul. And so when you are targeting all parts of yourself, your physical, your mental, your emotional, and your spiritual or your soul level, and you're reflecting back through that mirror to all parts of you, then you really begin to create that love of self on all levels. And you begin to have a huge counterstrike
Mhm.
on that inner critic because it has nowhere to go. It has no level to get into.
Absolutely. And this is such a critical one because I went in prior to us going through the mirror technique. I would do things like, write up inspirational messages on my mirror as I was kind of just diving into personal growth at this level, or at a new level, let's call it, right before we met. And those were good. It was like, be the change you want to see in the world. Beautiful thing, the fact that I wrote that on a sticky note on my wall, or like, wake up inspired, or be positive. These are all good things to say to yourself. It's a way to transition the inner critic into that inner champion, as you were talking about. So what I really, really like about this technique is that instead of it being about what I want others to look at me as, it was really a deeper dive into myself. It was like what the breath does, right? And so when we take that breath and we pause, and the whole world falls away, I'm not worried about others. I'm almost like forced into the now moment. So yeah, it just really forced me to go within and using the technique to really talk to myself and talk to my soul and really make that heart connection where I was so caught up in my head thinking about things, I was losing that compassion, that sympathy and empathy for myself. And so that really opened that floodgate to bring that love in and really practice that on a daily basis. And I think that was the power, the true power of this technique. And that's why it's so foundational. It's like if we were to go back to the house analogy, right?
Uh-huh.
It's like, okay, you could have the greatest house in the world, but if you put it on sand and there's, and the foundation can just be wiped away, well, then it's not going to be a great house. And so this is like, okay, using the mirror technique is your way to like find that plot of land that you know is going to be as structurally sound as the house you're going to build on it, and really create a strong, unbreakable foundation.
And that is the perfect analogy, because we are multifaceted beings.
Mm-hmm.
That's why when we look at ourselves, we talk about those layers, right? The spiritual, whatever that spiritual plight is for you, or that connection, even if it's agnostic, there's still some part that is a connection for you.
Yeah.
It is the connection to others, or the connection to something that has you moving forward. Then there is the mental and the emotional part of us. And then there's the physical. But there are all of these layers. And then there's every experience that adds to that. And so you have all of those different facets that create the memories that have sparked all of these things. So we have to look at all of these component parts, and they all add to the foundation, or they all place pressure on the foundation. And then it is up to us to go in there and understand what's adding support to our foundation and what's taking away or adding pressure to our foundation. And just like we would look at that for any structure, we have to look at it for our own structure and begin to remove the things, to clear the things, to heal the things that are placing undue pressure and stress on our foundation, so that over time we don't crumble. And that's on every level of ourself, not just on the physical, not just on the mental, emotional, on all aspects of who we are. And that's where this mirror technique gets us in there and truly looking at ourselves. And, we say the mirror technique and we automatically know, like, there's a mirror involved, right? And that's where some individuals that we've navigated this through, whether in group settings or individually, begin to shy away. Because yes, as we're getting ready in the mornings, we can look in the mirror and quickly get ourselves ready. But that doesn't mean we're truly looking at ourselves. It means that we're checking ourselves, right? Like, there's no cubs in the cave. We're good to go. Like, that's a check.
Yeah.
That's not looking at who we are inside.
Yeah.
And the goal of this technique is to truly connect with our reflection, connect with who we are by way of using the tool that is the mirror. And so the first step of this mirror technique is to choose a mirror, preferably a full length. But if you don't have access to a full length mirror, then it doesn't matter. Find any mirror. It could be the rear view mirror in your car.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter. It just needs to be a mirror that you can connect with your eyes first and foremost. Mm-hmm. Because your eyes are what will reflect your soul more so back to you than any other part. And so find a mirror where you can look deeply into your eyes, the same way that you would look into the eyes of the person that you love the most in this world. Because ultimately, you should be the person that you love most in this world, mm-hmm. along with whomever else you've allowed into that closeness of your soul.
Yeah. Yeah. And when I was going through this, my first instinct was like, well, I don't want to be a narcissist.
Oh, yeah.
I don't want to be conceited. I don't want to be so focused on me. And you had a beautiful response. You said, well, that's not love. That's not true, authentic love. That's you thinking. That's using your brain or your mind to to create a picture and to envelop yourself. That's ego, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you truly love yourself from the heart, you're not going to be a narcissist. You're not going to be egoic, because the ego is not centered in the heart. It's authentic. It's real. There's a big difference. And so I thought that was a beautiful differentiation when going into this, because that was one of my fears. Like I'd never wanted to be overly egoic or conceited and, oh, look at me, I'm the best, or I love myself the most, or, it's like, I never wanted to be that person. And so that was important going in, because that was a fear that I had that kept me from engaging in it right out of the gate.
Mm-hmm. And it's valid.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are many of us who feel that's part of the inner critic, right? And so we feel that so viscerally because the inner critic has been feeding us that. If we love ourselves as much as we love someone else, then we have now taken center stage. And that shouldn't be the way that it is, because then you're taking time away from others. But in truth, if we don't have a true connection of love for ourselves, it is not possible for us to know what it means to have that love to give to another person. Because if we don't have an experience inside, how can we share it outside?
Yeah, so right.
We're guessing at what that is. All we can do then is guess that this is what that experience must be like. I first have to have an experience of what it is inside of myself to have that true connection and awareness, because I've experienced it. And once I have that, then I know how to create that experience with you and for you. But until I do that, then I'm just throwing darts, right?
Yeah.
And generally not hitting the bullseye.
Yeah.
And so that's where it comes back to, is being able to look at ourselves and say, how close am I to knowing what love is within me? So that then I can be, and you talked about this in a previous podcast, the reality generator of that experience for others. Right?
Truth, my love.
So that's the first step, is to be able to maintain eye contact with yourself for up to 2 minutes, preferably up to 3 minutes.
Yeah.
But to really be able to look yourself in the eye. Many of us have a challenge doing this with the people that we love, to really be able to be vulnerable enough with the individuals that we love in our life to maintain eye contact for 2 to 3 minutes. So then when we shift that and we need to do it with ourselves in a mirror to set a timer and then hold eye contact with ourselves for 2 to 3 minutes, there's that vulnerability within ourselves that starts to creep in, and we begin to hear that inner critic really loudly.
Mm-hmm.
The voice starts to go off, and you start to, it's like that echo chamber that we talk about. It's like it's just spiraling in our heads, and we just want to look away, right? Because we want that to stop. We desire those words that are echoing in our head to just stop. Mm-hmm. But we have to be with it to understand what we're hearing first. The more we ignore it and put it to the back, the more room we give it to continue to take a stronghold. It's like letting a young one do whatever they want to do, thinking that, oh, eventually they'll grow out of it. Mm-hmm. They need guidance. They need to understand what it is. We need to understand what they're doing, and they need to understand what our direction is so that they can begin to acknowledge what it means to be an integrated part of the whole. Well, the inner critic has been running amok for a very long time. You need to understand what it's doing in there so that then your inner champion can get in there and go, not anymore. So you need to hear what's going on and see yourself. And so if you can't do that right out of the gate, maybe you only get a good 5 to 10 seconds of looking at yourself. That's okay. It happens. We've had individuals who couldn't look at themselves at all in the beginning. At all.
It's hard. It's hard. I know for me, like, it was like the 3 to 5 seconds was tough. I didn't realize to really look deep in. And it was, for the first time, it was like really looking at myself and being, it's like, wow, I don't like myself. And that's such a hard truth and realization to grasp without just feeling terrible.
Yeah.
The beauty is that when you actually acknowledge it, then you can actually do something about it. And that was the liberating aspect of it, but it didn't disregard the heart crushing feeling of, wow, how did I let myself get to the point where I don't like myself?
Yeah.
Like, come on. What, how unconscious and how unaware am I with my own actions? Even though I have the best intentions that I can think of, even though I have, it's not like I was attempting to be a bad person or a terrible person or anything like that. It was just, I was embodying what I thought everything and everyone around me wanted me to be. So I was so disconnected to who I am that I didn't like who I had become. And the only way to get out of that is to bring the awareness. That awareness can then create that knowledge, and that knowledge is, hey, I don't like myself. Okay. So then the action step is to start to change. And that can be changed through love, true, authentic, real love, through this beautiful technique where I'm sitting there or standing there talking to myself and saying, I love you. As you said, just as I tell you now, and that's such a beautiful talk about connection. Like, if we want to be close to someone else, it's not just being near them. Like, that's one thing. That's proximity. That's not actually being close to someone, right? In order to be close to someone, you have to be open with them. You have to be vulnerable. You have to be connected. Well, you're limiting that ability until you're that with yourself. And so this was that opportunity for the first time in my life. I'm really vulnerable, really open, really connected with myself. And then when I say it to myself, and then I say it to you, it's like it takes that whole thing to another level. And so when I tell you I love you, it's coming from the greatest love within myself, which after years and years and years and years is becoming more unlimited in its capacity. And then we become that overflowing pitcher of water that we talk about.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the next step
Yeah.
as well in the technique is once you get to that stage where you can actually hold that connection with yourself, it is that reinforcement of what you love about yourself. Because heaven knows that inner critic is making certain that it tells you everything that you don't like about yourself. As you said, that you had the realization that you didn't like yourself.
Yeah.
And so you had to take the time to really reinforce and reprogram and find the things that you loved about yourself, that were still you.
Yeah.
The components of you that were still you that were in there. It's those embers, right, of that superhero that still remained in there. Your inner champion that, even though it had been knocked down and kicked around and buried under the rubble of all the stuff, you were going through and finding it. And by looking at yourself and looking deep underneath that rubble, you found it. You found the sparks and you started fanning the flame. And it's like encouraging that superhero within, If you ever watch those superhero movies and you see the montage where the superhero starts to remember every person and every mentor that said all of the great things about them and what they could do, and then suddenly, poof, they're up and they're ready to go. That's basically what you're doing by thinking of 3 to 5 things that you truly, now you can't lie to yourself and make something up and say, this is it. Maybe in the moment that you're in, there's one thing, and that's okay too. It is be where you are and find the true, sincere thing or things that you love about yourself across all of those levels of yourself.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be physical. It could be a spiritual aspect that you love about yourself. It could be an emotional or mental aspect that you love about yourself. Find something that's there and say it, looking into your eyes, just like I'm looking into your eyes. And it's so easy for me to say, Austin, I love how amazing your heart is, because it is just this gift to the world. Likewise, I could look into a mirror and say something equally as loving to myself because I recognize that quality within myself.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And it creates that connection. We're that deeply connected. And I can connect with you at that level because I can connect with myself at that level, and it's authentic.
Yes. Right. And I know for many listening, that's going to be hard to get right into that. And that's why, even if it starts with something of a physical nature, like I love my eyebrows, or I love my hair, or, I love my smile, it could be something like that. Then you can move into kind of the mind, right? Like I love my resilience. I love my intellect. Just something along those lines, or I love my humor or something, right? And then into emotional, I love that I'm compassionate with others. I love that I'm a great best friend. All these things, each step can draw you deeper and deeper and deeper. And then on a spiritual level, then you might be able to be at a point where you authentically say, man, I love my heart. I love that I am an embodiment of what I feel connected beyond here to. Like, I love that the teachings or the practices that I believe in, I trust in them and I embody and I lift them forward for others and myself. Like there's so much that we can dive into with this, and and there's no wrong place to start. It's not too little. If you're like, hey, I really like my fingernails, like, that's beautiful. Like start there. Like we've got to start somewhere. There's nothing too small. And we can build on that, and it can have that snowball effect. And then you'll start to see, as you said, you can start to see the beautiful whole, because we are all whole, right? We're not broken. We just think we are. And that was, I know I experienced, I thought I was broken. I thought that something was wrong with me, or that I was missing something. And the whole time, the big thing I was missing was myself. Like I just didn't realize how disconnected from who I am was causing the separation, the illusion of separation that I was experiencing. And so everything I needed was already within me. And so when I was able to tap into that, that's like tapping into abundance. That's yeah. There's so much. I mean, it's not even explainable at that point. And then you can pull that in from your heart into everything that you do. Then you begin to live every aspect of that, and it completely changes your life.
I agree. And I know, like in the beginning when I first started this, it amazed me how I struggled to find 3 to 5 things in true transparency. But one thing I could find was I really like my eyes.
I love your eyes, baby.
And so I could honestly look at myself and say, I love and appreciate my eyes. And over time, like within a week, because I consistently said that to myself, talk about a reality generator. I found that individuals were complimenting my eyes everywhere I went.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if it was because I was more open to receiving the compliment. And so I opened myself up to hearing it more. Maybe individuals had always been doing it, but because I was so shut down, I didn't receive the compliment. Or maybe because I am a reality generator, as I was appreciating that trait within myself, it opened the gateway for others to appreciate it within me. And so, either way, it was creating space for something I appreciated to be appreciated by others. So, the more that we create that opportunity, the more we allow ourselves to connect within. It doesn't mean that we're becoming conceited. It means that we're becoming appreciative of the gift that we have. And no matter what, we're all unique, right? And so even when we can appreciate what we perceive as flaws and embrace them as our unique quirks, then we open up the opportunity for those to be appreciated too.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things I realized. So I would stand and look in the mirror, and of course, the judgments would come up too. It isn't as though you're looking in the mirror for 3 minutes and those never come up, because
Yes, that's a good
heaven,
point.
heaven knows,
Yeah.
truth be told, you're going to look at it and you're going to go, okay, yeah, I could appreciate those eyes, but that hair, and this is one of mine, I always think of it like a troll doll. It has a mind of its own, and it can really take off some days and be like full on. But then I got to a point where overdoing this throughout multiple weeks, I could look at it and go, well, how fortunate am I that I have such thick hair that has its own unique personality like me, that it wants to make its own statement. And I could even appreciate that.
Yeah.
Where before I was like, oh my gosh, I have to battle this again. And it went straight into that battle, which the inner critic loved to feed, right? Of course, we're ready to fight.
Yeah.
And so here I am ready to fight my own hair. Where instead I could look at it and go, well, how much fun is this? It's this amazing thing when a part of me has as much personality as I desire to have within myself.
Yeah.
It's an extension of me. And I could rewire my thoughts to be grateful for what I have instead of battling what I have. And so the more we do this, the more we open ourselves up to the beauty, especially around body image, because that is like we have a multi-billion-dollar industry built on the fact that we do not like having physical flaws. Instead of, and not that I have an issue with the industry whatsoever, it is a wonderful thing. It helps us in many ways. But instead of looking at it as flaws, we can look at it as this is part of who I am as a unique individual. And how do I appreciate what I have? Right? Because our bodies do a lot to help us navigate this life experience.
Yeah, they do.
So when we can look at that reflected back at us, and then whatever we say to ourselves in that mirror, if there's one thing that really causes our heart to open, like one statement, as we've said, 3 to 5, or if you really get on a roll and you say 50, great.
Absolutely.
But if there's one that really causes that heart to open, you can take a dry erase marker and write that one statement on the mirror so that it continues to reflect back at you throughout the day, to really resonate and build that confidence. Again, it helps attract that back to you, and it silences that inner critic. It's that foundational reinforcement that helps you build up instead of being torn down.
I love that. And I really love that abundance aspect of what you're saying, because a lot of what is negativity in the inner critic is fueled by lack and this lack mentality. When you focus on an abundant mentality, then those things start to fall away. And what is gratitude, but not the ultimate key to unlock abundance, right? So the more that we can dive into gratitude, then the inner critic will just be silenced, because you don't need a critic when you're in abundance.
Yeah, 100%. And ultimately, when you have at least one power statement of appreciation for yourself, then throughout the day, when you start to feel that inner critic kind of creeping in, you have something to feed that inner champion. You have that superpower to come back and say, nope, poof, back off. And then it's a visual reminder. And the next day, it's right there to present to you. And you can erase it and begin again the very next day. But at least it gives you, it arms you with at least one statement. You may not be able to remember all 50 or 5 or whatever, but you have the one. And it becomes that personal mantra throughout your day through this mirror technique. And you can look yourself in the eye and you can say it to yourself again. Yes. And so that, to me, became that flow. It was one of the first tools that really laid the foundation for me as I went up against my inner critic. And having come through multiple career paths that lived for criticism, both externally and internally, it was imperative for my own inward journey and growth. And so it's why it's one of the first ones in that starter kit that I place a great emphasis in. And it's one that we offer for free.
Yes, absolutely. And just a quick reminder, those steps, it's, grab a mirror, look yourself in the eyes, say the things that you love to yourself, and then find a statement that you can write. And really, really important, make sure it's not a permanent marker. Make sure it's a dry erase marker.
Yeah. You might love it, but you don't. You may not want to see it all the time.
And just that simple but powerful practice can make all the difference. And sometimes the most powerful things in the world are the simplest, because there's such beauty in its simplicity. And so, feel free to right now go to silenceyourinnercritic.com. You can sign up for our book, and you also get this free workshop. It'll be emailed you directly and immediately, so you could start right away and get instant access to it. And we're even going to throw in some bonus emails just to kind of support you along the way. And we're right here. So anytime, if you're watching this video now and you have a question, or you're watching it later and you come back to it, or as you're actually taking the course, you want to write comments in the course, we're here. We actually read them. We love hearing them. We're here to support you.
Absolutely. And we can't thank you enough for tuning in and joining us on this journey of the Heart Leader podcast, where our heart and our mind align. I'm your host, Amber, and I am joined by Austin as we empower you for the rising of your inner champion as we silence our inner critic. As Austin said, you can head on over to silenceyourinnercritic.com and register for a pre-registration for this book and get a 20% off when it launches, along with the course of the mirror technique. Don't forget, if you would like to make certain that you don't miss an episode as we reveal some of these tools and techniques that are in the book, you can subscribe wherever you are listening to us. It just takes one little click and you will receive all of those notifications. Until next time, we look forward to hearing from you and seeing you in the community.